The dominant business mindset is broken. We've optimized for short-term outcomes, surface-level engagement, and mechanical models of motivation, and it's failing us. In this episode, we'll unpack what can replace it. Toby Haug is the founder of the Humanizing Business Network and a pioneer global voice in reshaping corporate culture for the future of work. After closing a 21-year chapter at SAP, where he led culture transformation at scale, Toby continues to challenge traditional models by rethinking work through a human-centric lens, augmenting the human dimension to build organizations that are more resilient, sustainable, and future-ready. With over 25 years in product, design, and innovation, Toby turns culture into a measurable competitive edge. He champions new models of self-managed teams, bringing a systems-level perspective on how organizations can become more human, more adaptive, and more meaningful. Toby, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Before we dive in, what's sitting with you in a short sentence right now?
Oh, first of all, I think I'm coming here very relaxed because I just came back from a 2-week sailing vacation. But I'm also really excited because through that vacation and through that reflection, not only did I regain some energy, but also excitement because I'm starting a new chapter and I'm quite excited to see where it leads.
Well, beautiful. Let's talk about it. So, Toby, you're starting a new chapter.
Yes, very exciting one because I've had a very diverse background. I actually started in biochemistry and zoology, but I moved into design and tech over 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And have had a very interesting, fulfilling, grateful career within SAP, running organizations, innovation. And now when I'm stepping outside of those very familiar rules and constructs that we all know within large organizations, I found really one of the things I love doing is spreading the message through networking and community. And I've been very, very lucky to be able to come in contact with many wonderful big global companies that have very similar challenges. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on now.
Well, that's beautiful. Great. And maybe before we get into the amazing things and impact you have been having, not just at SAP, but as well through many different organizations through your work at SAP. I just want maybe our listeners and viewers to get to know the human being. If we're talking about a humanizing business, right?
Yeah.
Let's get into the human part first. Maybe like born and raised where, with your background, whatever you want to tell us about you as a person.
Yeah. So I have a mixed background. So my parents are German, but I was born and raised in the U.S. Near Boston. So I tell everyone I'm from Boston, and I moved back to Europe about 23 years ago, and joined SAP. I was very motivated by design, creativity, and as I was developing myself in design, I started realizing actually what I really love doing is creating and holding space for innovation and design and personal interactions to happen, because that's where the magic is. And I love seeing that spark in people's eyes when they're starting to really let go of titles and positions and even personal opinions and starting to co-develop something together. It's just a wonderful feeling.
That's great. And so you when you moved back, you were where and how long you have been in Barcelona? Because
yes.
we're recording in Barcelona here for everyone to know.
So I moved to Germany, like I said, and SAP is a big global corporation. And so I was in their headquarters in Walldorf, and then started an innovation space in Heidelberg, moving then to Barcelona about 7 years ago already, to start a cultural transformation project for the board of SAP.
Amazing. So we'll get to that as well. What I love about the path you've just explained is you started at some point having the title of Chief Happiness Officer, and you challenged that really quickly.
Yes.
So I think it's like so controversial. Like some people are like super hyped about it. Some people saying like, oh, this is so fake, whatever. So what's your view on that? Because I think you have a particular lens here.
Okay, so to be fair, I'm not putting down the title.
Yeah.
But I think everything lives and thrives in a specific context. So I was running innovation teams in my own innovation space. And then the board approached me and said, hey, would you take on this new challenge of doing a cultural transformations project? with the title of Chief Happiness Officer, which was very hip at the time. But they said, we want you to do this in the real world. And I said, what's the real world? And they said, sales. So if you can do this in a sales environment, so out of your nice, comfortable innovation bubble and do it in a sales environment, then that's something that can be scaled within the company. And so Barcelona was the perfect place to pilot this. And when I came to Barcelona, learning more about our own sales organization, especially the very unique and amazing sales organization that we had here, I very quickly realized that the term happiness is not the right term to speak about cultural transformation. So I made two mistakes. One is the association with happiness as an emotion. And the second one, I came in with the thing that you never should do is I came in with an ego saying, oh, the board gave me this weird, wacky title. And of course, people were laughing about it, sometimes behind my back, sometimes straight in my, but within 1 month, I realized, okay, I made the mistake of coming in with a title, which made it about me and not us. And then the second is the term of happiness was not talking about culture, which everybody owns, right? And it's not just a fleeting emotion. So within 1 month, we transferred or we rebranded that to call the initiative Humanizing Business. And that really stuck. Those two words that people don't always put together, unfortunately, really started conversations that we really wanted to have, much more so than the term happiness.
What's so important, impactful about humanizing business in the same sentence for you?
Yeah.
What's your belief behind it? And I know it's not just beliefs, it's as well like what you have observed and measured on the field. So yeah, can you talk more about that?
I can talk for a long time about this. This is my passion. So first, I believe that we're again being conscious of the context that we're working in. We're working in big business, big global businesses that have a big challenge because they've been successful in the past. And success in the past is no longer a measure for success in the future. We all know that. But that's where hierarchies, processes, rigidity comes from. And I really wanted to honor the fact that we're part of a business. We need to be performant and not ignore that. But I wanted to come back to some more of the human qualities that enable corporations to be more reflective, more agile, to get more people, to let those people kind of blossom and show their true selves and not just fit in and fit into structures. So to balance those two, the performance and the human qualities that actually make these large corporations thrive in the future.
I brought something to maybe for you, let's see if it works, to show us a little bit more concretely what you're doing. Because when we get into it, I found it fascinating, the impact you can have on an organization.
Yeah.
Implementing concrete changes in the way it's structured, right? And right before we get to that, I thought maybe, and tell me if it's not the right example, the App House example, that you had like full autonomy, 3 years, a company within the company, something like that.
Yes.
And how it's impacted within the company and outside. Yeah. I found that this is something really people would love to hear.
I'm going to step back and say, so again, I'm very grateful for SAP to give me that opportunity. I was within SAP as design thinking, so about 18 years ago, was really being established in our product line. And I was working and running design teams in our product line at the time. And it was so successful that the board came to my wonderful friend and mentor and boss at the time and myself saying, would you take your experience and bring that out to our customers and partners? And so they gave us a bunch of headcount, a bunch of budget, and then something else happened. They looked away for almost 3 years. So there's this wonderful term in German called Narrenfreiheit, which means the freedom of the fool, right, in the middle. So we had space and time to develop ourselves, the team, our services. And what we ended up doing was going into, not in Walldorf, which is the headquarters, but just around the corner is Heidelberg, an old historical city that a lot of people know. And we established a new design and design thinking space there. This was not done with an architect. This was done with the designers, with the team. We crafted the spaces. We brought in our own sewing machines and bought IKEA furnitures and repainted it. So it really was a reflection of the team. And then we started inviting and working with some of SAP's largest customers, some of the world's biggest companies, on their sticky challenges using methodologies like design thinking to do so. But it was very experiential. So I can't tell you how often I heard CEOs and important business stakeholders coming in and just feeling in a different space. So the psychology of the space we created, the way we were approaching things with being very non-hierarchical, letting all perceptions or perspectives come together, was that aha moment for me. Personally, you feel it. So many times people said at the end of an amazing workshop, they said, well, this feels so natural. When did we lose that ability to interact together?
Yeah,
and
that you find maybe like in more like startups or starting projects where everything is organic, and then the company is so big and you lose the culture, right?
You lose the culture. The culture becomes rigid. And people conform to, when they join the company, they conform to that rather than always being themselves. And so the higher I got, the more successful we got, and we started scaling this worldwide with one of the founders of SAP's help. And so my place was less and less in running the projects, but holding the space. And that's really where I got, how to say this? This team was highly proficient. We did amazing projects around the world, very, very proud and grateful for that team. But the thing that I became better known for within and outside of SAP was the way that we structured the team in a completely non-hierarchical way. It was I have so many stories of how the team defined its own strategy, the projects, the staffing. We never took the standard approach, and it was thriving as a team. And I realized that's what I wish to be able to scale. And so within SAP, I became better known for how this team was running. We very often had our own board members doing board meetings in the App House, so they felt it. And that's how I then got the recognition also to take that next step and become the Chief Happiness Officer.
So I brought a little something here. I want you to show us what you're doing, right? Actually.
You cannot just approach things through a theoretical lens, especially working in a highly performant environment like in a sales environment. So that's where I really had to make sure I had a clear vision and strategy to get there and be able to communicate that, but it really ended up being an experience. So just those experiences that I just described about the App House, I had to bring into my new role. So I really focused on micro interventions, little ways that everybody in the organization, but especially the leaders and leadership, could experience what it felt like, and then have that same aha moment that I enjoyed using design thinking of people saying, yeah, this feels so natural. This feels so normal. We should do more of this in the future. And also applying some change management techniques. You know, there's many of them, but there's a wonderful one around change management around chaotic systems where you can't always predict outcomes. And so it's more of a journey and being able to let things emerge, because the things that now have emerged within the pilot within Barcelona are make for wonderful stories, but it's the journey that gets there. So as we're trying to scale this to other parts of SAP, but also now in my next step to help other corporations to have these experiences, it's not about saying, do it like we did it in Barcelona. It's the process to get there, the experience and the steps along the way that makes it personal.
Let's see what this does.
Yeah, now I'm excited.
But I have like some paper for you, and as well like some colors.
Okay.
Here you go. Ooh. And you see, like I just like drafted something that might be a little bit silly, but maybe it's fun.
I like silly.
Right? So
Machine hierarchy, KPIs.
So I'm like, just to inspire a little bit. From the way a big company is structured versus what you're bringing,
Yes.
Like, so I just asked an AI to help me. So if you would draw yourself, like what you observe in companies, like maybe on the left side, on how they're structured, how they function, and then where you take them, or where you wish in an ideal world they would be. Like what would you draw, and which color would you use?
On the left-hand side, I'm gonna stick. Sorry, old school. I'm gonna stick using red because I see it as a very critical moment. of a typical hierarchy. A hierarchy with a few on the top, many on the bottom, where decisions go down and information goes up through and gets filtered through many different layers of middle management, right?
Do you want to show the camera quickly?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Then I can.
Sorry
I can
for my
do the-
scaling.
No, that's good. That's
my,
good.
my,
That's good.
my,
That's good.
Design skills. However, this all plays within a context.
Yeah.
And first of all, the context is always changing, right? And we also have many customers. And who has the most contact with customers? It's actually these people, right? So what I'm trying to put in with this image is old-fashioned hierarchies from the Tayloristic times were meant to be highly performant and efficient, so do more with less, in very stable environments. That's not the world today. We have no stable environment around us if we're looking business, politics, environment. And so rigid systems do not react fast enough. This idea that the customers are giving feedback to the bottom line, or not the bottom line, but the front line individuals, this information has to go up and get filtered through all the beautiful red, yellow, green lights, and very seldomly does a red light get up here, and decisions have to come. By the time all of that happens and all the politics along the way, the problem is escalated. There's the company is not able to change.
So it's interesting because what you're actually changing as well is even not just a top-down company versus servant leadership, but you're saying even servant leadership, as we know, can be outperformed by a more dynamic model you're going to show us, right?
So I'm going to say where I hope the future and what I've in my small world, so not trying to extrapolate to something too globally. I think there are many better ways to do it, and we'll need all types of leaders and leadership.
Yeah.
Let me make one other thing clear because this comes up very often. We have the term management and we have the term leadership. And honestly, for performant business, remember, humanizing business, we are going to need both. So we need managers that manage outcomes, and we're going to need leaders that can lead people, teams, strategies, and organizations.
So the way you understand here, managers are like operators, and leaders are what, like more inspiring the vision?
Yes, and again, I think a leader is only a leader if people follow. So moving away from hierarchies, also moving away from the structures of
everyone
titles.
is a leader.
Everyone is leader, which fits very well, and everybody has leadership capabilities in different contexts. You know, and that's one of the things we practice within the App House. Depending on what project and what customer challenge we were dealing with, other people would step up and say, "Hey, I know this. This is the thing that this is more technical. That's my area." And so
there is this idea of like empowering everyone in their genius zone.
And giving them the ability, the time, the space, the permission, if you will, even though the word permission already implies a certain giving permission. To step up if they're able to. I have met amazing leaders who in that moment did not feel fit to lead. Maybe there's something going on in their personal life or however. So this is an ebb and flow that happens naturally. And if you can create a context where people can step up, work in tandem, create synergies that no system process will be able to figure out. So that's where I think, again, I'm going to come back a little bit to what you were drawing here, is a more networked organization where you can have teams of teams, you can have individuals. It's more, I think this is very standard, but instead of a hierarchy, it's much more of a team of team approach with circles. Meaning circles can have somebody who is leading them, who's in charge of maybe communicating externally. Circles can expand, they can contract, they can change, and the connections between the circles can also be managed in very fluid ways. So I think having self-defining teams within the boundaries of business is imminently possible. There are many examples of this. There's just not that many examples at scale. And so that's one of the things I also learned within the App House is you can start somewhere. We were a small team. I think the largest size, we were about 85 people within a company of 110,000. But we proved the case that it can be done. It can be done successfully. It has a multitude of benefits for the team, for the company. And again, it's about scaling through experimentation.
Yeah.
So it's not saying this is top down, the way we're now going to restructure. There are good intents. So Bayer, for instance, their CEO about a year and a half ago announced that they're going to be removing hierarchies and gradually stepping into a much more networked corporate structure. And I think the way that he's approaching it is very, very well done because he's not pushing it through. He's letting each location respect the process and the journey to get there. But it's still messy.
It sounds almost like a centralization, decentralization debate.
Yes, that will always happen. Companies always go from a centralized to decentralized. And I think the more centralized, the lifespan of a centralized organizational structure is very limited, or should be very limited. It has its time and place, especially when you're starting something new and trying to gain momentum. You have to gather the people around an idea, a new strategy to gain that momentum. But then as soon as it starts developing and you want to create a natural flow after that initial stage, then you have to let go. And that letting go means moving away from hierarchies and into a much more fluid structure. So we're already seeing how jobs are changing rapidly, how people development and their skills are changing. And having a more fluid environment allows people within guardrails, business guardrails, expectation guardrails, to be able to self-define on what do they want to work. How much is it? We get back into the topic of remote work versus on-site work. There's a lot of dimensions that can be handled by the teams depending on the context.
So if a board would have to use a bit more of that and arbitrate around this topic, where we've seen those past years many tech companies choosing very different approaches, remote versus in-person at the office.
Yeah.
How would they approach the topic using this model?
So again, making things experimental. So what we practiced or piloted in Barcelona, and then it became a best practice within SAP globally, was actually a very, very simple approach where a lot of companies that I talk to, they're like, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Instead of making a policy, provide a structure for teams to have an intelligent conversation about what makes them the most effective. Meaning it's not a top-down management decision. It's also not a bottom-up individual decision, but to enable teams to have a conversation. So for instance, what that meant for us is we had a very simple workshop format, so simple that everybody could just take it and use it, which a team would work on, either in person or online using tools like Mural, with some guiding questions about where do you find inspiration, what does your daily work look like, how do you work together as a team, how do you work with other teams, some trigger questions. And as they're answering that, we ask them to put it on a graph of frequency and versus collaboration, meaning is this something you do alone, with some people, or with a lot of people? And visually, that canvas very quickly fills up, and the teams themselves start noticing, the things that I do frequently but alone, that's the stuff I should focus on when I'm working at home and need focus work. The things I do frequently with more people, that's the reason to come into the office. And the balance between the two is what informs the team about how often does it make sense to come into the office and for what purpose. And through that conversation, so we did this in Barcelona. We did it with about 45 separate teams, and then I took that and brought it together so it also adapted our office policy and how we use space and so on. Amazing things came out. All of a sudden, a team came to me and said, you know what? We decided we only need to come into the office once a month. I was like, really? Okay. Tell me more about that. I said, yeah, because we're all experts. We know each other for a long time. We're a pretty performant team. it's nice for us to reconnect, but actually, I want to be in the office when that team over there comes in because I work mainly with them. And so again, coming into more self-forming, all of a sudden we were creating, with our space concept, where people could interact best for the best of their team, the best of the business, the best for the outcomes that they needed, and not through some generic top-down mandate.
Yeah, and I'm curious, did any team came back with, we need to be at the office every day?
Yes. So this was also, so we had the whole spectrum. And again, there's never one size fits all. And this is a small location for SAP. It's about 560 people at this point. And we had teams that were, let's say, very young. So these teams were meant for recent grads, new hires, their first, 2 to 5 years in the job market, and they had a lot to learn. This was a very international location, so people were coming here from their countries, and a lot of their social connectivity was through work. So they're the ones that really said, no, we really thrive in that environment. And through different conversations, we also had to remodel some of our spaces. Right? Because a lot of the times they said, yeah, well, we're coming in to learn from each other. We're coming in to strategize, or in sales through the quarterly rhythms of closings. There's certain time periods that we really want to come together, and all these teams sit together to get things done quickly, and they celebrate afterwards. The spaces had to reflect that. So we actually had to create more community spaces and spaces that people can work in larger teams with.
This is great. And so who run the workshops?
So initially, I did, or my team did here, the Humanizing Business team.
So behind my question is like, what's more efficient? That when it's a very simple workshop to lead with clear instructions, whose role should it be? External from the team, within the team? So that's a bit my question.
So our end goal was to have the teams do it themselves. And many managers felt very comfortable to be a moderator, to be part of the conversation without dictating it, right? The classic challenge of like, hey, the manager in the room and everybody adjusting to what she or he says. Other teams asked specifically, hey, can we get somebody else? So my team started it. We did about 5 workshops. We spoke about it. We videoed it. We talked to the team afterwards. We created a quick video so that other teams heard, they're doing it this way. That seems to work really well. We want to do it as well. And then if they're asking for external moderation, we started asking one of the teams that had already done it, ran it, and said, hey, would you mind moderating this 1-hour workshop for this other team? And so those people with the experience, maybe they got some coaching, some help, but they then heard what other teams were thinking and doing. They gained empathy between the teams through that. And it, again, didn't centralize everything to myself or my team. It's really about maintaining the idea of a network rather than my team being central and the one-stop shop for all of this. So everything we were trying to do, we were always trying to do it with others, not for others.
What I really love about this, through this example, is that as human beings, we don't like to be told what we should do, right? And sometimes like someone else, we're between adults, and someone else has maybe the best working thing as a solution for us, but the way it's communicated completely changes how I'm going to feel about it. And if something is pushed on me or forced, they're going to meet resistance. It's like a human reflex, right?
Always.
So by empowering me to think about it myself, I'm kind of like putting myself for a second in a context, in the shoes of the decision maker. And so whatever decision is going to come out of that, I'm going to have so much more commitment over it. And you save, I'm sure, so much time in gossiping and in resistance and change management, different emotions, when it's actually like, okay, you know what? It's on you, right? What do you want to do about it? And then it puts people in a leadership position.
It does. It allows them to step into it if they wish. And again, we never forced like every team has to run this workshop. Of course not. But that's what I mentioned. We did it a couple times with the early adopters, if you will, and presented that. This is part of that change management in chaotic systems is create a positive example and shine a light on that. And then, of course, the third step is manage the boundary conditions so certain behaviors get emphasized. And so we found those teams. We after they ran it successfully, we interviewed them, we talked about it, we created videos, sent it around, and I presented this in the various management teams. And then the next round came with people saying, "Oh, that's a good idea. Can we do that too?" And then we, everybody that decides to do it will then accept the answers to that as well. Yeah. Not every team did it. And that's fine. We have to accept that it's not about the efficiency of the approach. It's about the journey along the way. And then every team started. The good teams that really did it, they held on to that, and they did it again every year because they had new hires. And then every new hire heard, this is, I've jumped over one step. At the end of the workshop, we asked the team to write a team commitment to each other. So it was actually a written form that they themselves signed to say, okay, I get it. So I'm very senior, you're very junior. You want to come in the office so that you can learn from me. I would prefer to stay at home as often as possible. But as a team, let's find this agreement. So that was also kind of a written documentation that all the new hires would be able to see. And sometimes it had to be adjusted because teams change. And that was a wonderful approach.
I love it. So, and how would you answer an executive?
Yeah.
Let's say a CEO or someone in the executive board thinking like what I'm seeing sometimes when I'm coaching some of them, which is like a very kind of like data-based engineer mindset, which has so much value in so many situations. Saying, but the thing that matters is, does it work or not? And there is only one best solution, and that's the one that everyone should apply. So I'm okay that you kind of like manipulate people into choosing them themselves, but I want this outcome, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage that? Because my assumption is that you might be confronted sometimes in companies, and I'm not talking particularly in your environments, but like out there.
Yeah. No, even within SAP, I mean, it's a massive company, and different divisions have different styles. So I think my simple answer for that is the change starts with the person, not the process, so that those leaders, if they want something, they should try it themselves first. The most powerful, how does the saying go? The more you change yourself, the more the people around you change. So I've often asked, like, oh, this is a nice, why are you rolling this out into your organization without having done it yourself? So how many board members or in their teams, at whatever leadership level you are, say, hey, let's try this workshop ourselves and see what happens. If it works, then their leaders will propagate it in because it's working. It feels right. So always start with yourself first and not just think, I have to optimize or make this as efficient and scalable from the beginning.
There is one thing when we deliver a training, a workshop, like the 4 levels of Kirkpatrick.
Yes.
So I'm guessing that a workshop that is run well, and especially that is empowering people at every level, probably has a very high good reaction, right? Yeah. People like it.
Yes.
Probably if there is like some commitment step, the knowledge as well from it is great. What I'm interested in is, okay, but what are the concrete results, the financial results around having in a huge company hundreds of teams with 100 different decisions around remote versus in person?
Yeah.
And does it actually help the business or not? Right?
Yeah.
Not that I'm not convinced, but I can definitely see how some people would be like, it sounds nice, but I'm a bit suspicious of the outcome.
Can I maybe twist that a bit and say, I think we have a natural fear of messy, right? I don't think it's like, oh, we don't believe in an outcome, but there might not be a clear outcome. It might be a constant conversation that we have to adjust to, and that feels incomplete. And I think leaders of organizations are looking to say, I need a resolution for this problem so I can move on to the next one. and we don't like the messiness that this is something in development. But I think a lot of the more technical companies are becoming, especially with the advent of AI integrations and agentic AIs, the more we're going to have to feel comfortable with the messiness. And through time, you'll see patterns evolving, like certain locations, certain teams. If you're a global team, you might want to be more remote. If you're a more customer-centric team, you might need to be more present. So there is a messiness, but through that messiness, with a little bit of patience, patterns will evolve. And so we're already seeing that right now in larger corporations. We know that the performance, there's a multitude of benefits for being on-site and seeing people. There's a multitude of benefits for being remote and finding talent wherever they are, allowing those people, especially people with complicated living situations, to have the flexibility to manage their time. And you can have the best of both. So we've had this conversation in the Humanizing Business Network quite often. We have companies represented that have gone back to a full-time office. We have companies that are fully remote that very often started as fully remote. And then there's amazing hybrid companies that I think are looking for the best practices of both worlds, meaning instead of investing CapEx in large buildings, they're taking some of that money to then enable teams to come together in a very focused, on-site, 1 week, strategic, personal reconnection. And then people can work remote again for the next several months. So if 2 or even 3 times a year, teams can come back together, you're having a little bit of the best of both worlds if it's done strategically and well. And so I think that's evolving right now.
Would I translate correctly the kind of like almost, I would say, ideology belief behind what you're saying, that for successful businesses of the future, we need to get away from a black and white thinking and fully embrace the gray zone, right? Nuance thinking. And two, to actually have a strong inner belief that everyone is a leader, but that everyone is resourceful. That we can trust people to make the best decisions for their own team on the ground, regardless of their level.
And I think on a leadership or personal level, to be more and more comfortable with ambiguity. And on the other level, to create contexts and spaces that people feel that they can step up, they can self-organize, that it's not just accepted, but it's expected, it's supported. And that also sometimes can clash with business priorities, saying, so the open market, we have promised, 2,000% growth. And actually, when you're talking to people, that might not be realistic, right? So again, to respect and hold a space that people can be their best, feel safe, and step into a much more flexible role. That's the only way to be, I think, performant in the future.
So I understand now, how you can implement this great work within the company at all levels, to have the board on board by having them experience it.
Yes.
The last kind of like bridge or change I'm seeing is, how do you convince the board or the investors more at the investor level that expect sometimes always 2-digit growth to be on board as well? Because I can understand how you can help executive let go of control. How do you handle executives being fully on board with you, but having to work as well with the tension to the investors having huge expectations that sometimes they know like maybe don't meet what people need in this moment?
I think that's the key question of the day. I don't have an easy answer for that one. I think what's important is to be able to have a conversation with similar metrics. So where it always falls short is you have output metrics. So a lot of the leaders and C-levels are working with stakeholders that are just looking at outcomes. This is the revenue, this is the growth, this is the top line and bottom line. And on the other hand, you have very humanistic, human-centric needs and theories about we have to be more flexible and self-organized. but you're not using the same language. So I think one of the things we did here in Barcelona, and to be honest, it's a sales organization. That makes it in some ways challenging, in some ways super easy, because sales has only one KPI, and that's revenue, and it's tracked like you wouldn't believe. So as we were doing these interventions, we were measuring the revenue impact. So I can go into more detail, and happy to also share this, but for this small part of the sales organization that's managing small, medium-sized accounts, so not even the large, huge companies, we easily tracked over 10.5 million euros of revenue increase through the small interventions we were doing on a cultural side. And so here we were measuring the effect of inputs and changes with the same metric that we were reporting externally about outcomes and revenue. And all of a sudden we could say, hey, how is that worth the outcome? It's the same revenue that we could then talk to stakeholders. So internally within SAP to convince others, but also I think we never got to board level that they're now using these metrics to explain to our shareholders. But I think you have to also look at having hard numbers, hard facts, and a strategy. Because at the end of the day, it's still up to our top leaders to say, this is the strategy for the organization. This is how dynamic our markets are. That's why we have to become more culturally fit, more flexible. If we don't do that, dear stakeholders and shareholders, we're going to be obsolete in the short term.
And I love the term you have found, humanizing business, because it's almost like a way to reconcile what could be a belief that they're opposed, right?
Yes.
That all leaders that are great with people tend to not have that many great numbers, and people are really good with numbers. They hurt people, and there is this belief that they're in contradiction. But here you're just showing that midterm, long term, humanizing business is great for both humans and business.
And it has to be, because if you look at the speed of innovation around AI and how that's affecting the job market and businesses, if we do not balance the equation with the human part, I'm actually a very positive person for the future, and I see many potentials. But just to put it this way, I know a lot of people have fear that, if 50% of the job market is going to be affected by agentic AI within 3 to 5 years, does that mean from a purely business perspective, I fire 50% of my workforce and hey, I'm making more profit? No, that conversation needs to start now, it needs to start early, and needs to be balanced with the human part. So what does that mean to the people in our organizations, for the products, for the purpose of the corporation? We need to start that conversation early, because if you're just looking at a pure capitalistic business mindset, there could be a lot of damage done on the human side. So I like bringing those two things together. It's not always an easy conversation, but it is amazing to me. The more companies that I talk to that are part of this network, the more inspiration. You're like, oh my God, you do that?
I don't want to open this conversation because it's gonna open something like huge, but it's my brain is going as you're talking with how this could be potentially applied to how a country is managed, right? Like the decentralization. It's almost a political topic. How do we take decisions in an organization? Right? Is it decentralized? Do we trust everyone to be empowered? Or do we take it from one place and impose it on people and meet resistance, right? So it's.
And in our network, we even have some governmental agencies and consul generals are in, because they are also part of large, complex organizations that are still in a very higher. So their output has a different political impact than a business does. But they have very similar challenges. So
I mean, here in Barcelona, a few years ago, I remember there was a conversation happening about what they should do in my neighborhood, about a certain building that they decided to destroy and what to put in place. And they organized for all the neighbors, and I was invited, we're all invited, to go and decide together what it should be, right?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, because if you just learn about it, maybe it's the same outcome that you decided during the process, but naturally you're like, you know, there is a bit of resistance.
Yeah.
Like, who took that decision? Why?
Yeah,
right?
it's happening to you,
It's
not with you.
It's
Yeah.
happening to you, and you sometimes you don't know the rationale,
Yeah.
and sometimes you feel like it's my place too, right?
Yeah.
I'm part of the community.
Right, and I'm feeling honored and respected, and
Yeah.
and even if your decision at the end is not the final one, you're hearing other people's opinion, and you understand the context in which that decision was made.
And you could voice yours.
Yeah.
And you can be more okay with the fact that at the end it was not that time
Yeah.
decided.
Yeah.
Great, beautiful. Do you want to show your drawing?
Sure. I didn't get that far with
That's
the
fine.
drawing, but
So this part, you know, is about exploring together
yeah,
a challenge you're currently facing.
yeah.
What would you want to explore in this short conversation together?
There are many challenges, especially of starting something new and starting a new journey and a new chapter. However, I'm bringing with me a challenge that's still stuck in my head and I can't quite let go of. Also because I know it's a very common challenge, and I have not seen or heard of an easy answer. There are obviously no easy answers
Yeah.
for complex challenges, but that challenge is that throughout my journey within SAP, I've been quite good at navigating the politics of having good relations and connections and being visible and being able to explain a vision. And that gave me a lot of connection to upper level management, to sponsors, to budget, and so on. However, that is a constantly shifting landscape. I think in the last 2 years alone, we at SAP and in my area, we had 14 different changes of board and L1 levels. And so for someone who is trying to build something new, who is trying to have a lot of these complex initiatives need time. It's not a short, they need time to develop. Like we were talking about in the first part, people need to experience this, and that takes time. It's a natural, organic scale. And if your stakeholders are constantly changing, I was finding I was spending so much time just finding the next stakeholder and constantly being able to hold that space for something new to develop and develop in meaningful ways. And even here in Barcelona, the manager that brought me in here, an amazing guy that really believed I had full support and visibility. I had board level support as well. So the local was more business and the board was more strategic. And that has changed so dramatically. And the context that you're trying to start something new, especially more, let's say, beyond the standard operating model of an organization, you will always find people that they've been successful, they've been recognized, they've gotten to certain levels because they've played ball, and they don't want to change the status quo. They're afraid to. They're good at being performant within that stable system. And so my biggest challenge there, and a little bit frustration, sadness, is the inability for consistency, or it's very difficult because that rate of change on strategy, on people, on leaders, even on organizations and constant reorganizations, it makes it very difficult for this type of organizational change to not just take hold, but even just to be practiced and before something radical changes again. And it feels like that rate of change is happening so fast that as a leader of change, I think not just myself, but others in other companies that I've spoken to, it's exhausting. And so part of my move outside of SAP is also kind of the gratefulness for all the things I've experienced, but also a little bit the frustration to say, like, how could we have reached that level, kind of that next plateau where things have been accepted and are starting to become part of a norm before the next challenge and the next level of development? It feels like we're just getting started. We have amazing traction just here in Barcelona, and then everything changes again, and you're starting over again. So I think for change makers, especially in leadership positions that are trying to develop the future, it's an exhausting work. And I
see.
wish there was something to be done there.
The metaphor that comes to me is you spend so much time working the earth, planting the seeds, and as you see the very first flowers, someone comes and rips everything up.
Yeah. Or the sunshine goes away, and
or there's no rain.
There's no rain. Now, to be fair, my biggest pride is not in the organization. Like I've created a new stable organization. But rather, like if I step back and let go of that frustration a bit, the place that I find most joy is the hundreds of people that have experienced that. They take a piece of that energy with them. Mm-hmm. And when I left SAP, one of the main takeaways is humanizing business continues in each and every one of you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that resonates, and it's something that I feel very strongly about. It's the individuals that take that, and especially if they're young and not yet in leadership positions, they will take some of that experience with them as they become and develop themselves as leaders. And hopefully, a few of them are brave enough to challenge the status quo along the way.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So. You used the word, as you were describing this constant change that is exhausting. You used the word, there is frustration and a bit of sadness.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So my assumption is that there is a kind of a bigger dream that is not emerging because of that.
Yeah.
So what about we explore for a second the big dream there?
The hope is that, I think if my hope is that if I can broaden the context of these experiences and we talk more about it, there's a higher likelihood that, that seed will grow over there and maybe over there. And just within one corporation, one part of the business, you have certain restrictions and constraints that you don't have if you can broaden the discussion even more. And I even found that within SAP. I found amazing leaders running locations in, so SAP has 191 locations, and I had amazing conversations where they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to try that here. And honestly, I don't know what happened after that, but they had our playbooks and they tried things out on their own, and I hope that things develop further. It doesn't always happen where you are. And I think that's part of what my big dream is that we can just show what's possible by discussing this with organizations of a similar size and complexity. Because, for instance, I heard amazing things that what Unilever is doing with 450,000 person. And I said, wow, if you guys can do that, that means we could do that too. If we hear something cool and nifty from a startup, it's very hard to interpret that into our corporate context. So corporates and complex organizations talking to each other, I think the more we do that, the more we can get inspired, the more we can share assets, meaning that through inspiration, we can actually have the support to do the next step. That's where I'm hoping it goes. And that at the end of this journey, I can see how things have continued to grow rather than just kind of be a pilot phase that didn't quite make it to something more permanent.
So your last day was just yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And you're living with many great things and a bit of that feeling, right?
Yeah.
So what's your hope for this short conversation? That's realistic in a small chat, but still satisfying, that makes you feel like at the end, okay, maybe I have advanced a little bit on that topic. Mm-hmm. What's the hope?
I think it's to accept and put to bed some of those frustrations I'm still carrying with me, so that I can be open for the next chapter and open for the next.
Yeah. What's in those frustrations? If you would find a metaphor for it, in a I don't know, in a character, in a force of nature, whatever. What do you see when you look at this frustration or this? What is in there? What does it look like?
I like the metaphor we used before about a garden. Mm-hmm. Right? A garden requires so much for it to be thriving.
Yeah.
Right. It needs nutrients and sunlight and rain, and you need a gardener and people who take care of it, and not people that trample on the
Yeah.
freshly laid grass. It's a very
Okay.
kind of holistic
Great.
vision.
So, if we take that lens right now of that issue, I know so many great things happen too, but just for the sake of this conversation, what happens? What has happened to that garden over the past years?
It feels to me like we have pictures of a beautiful, thriving garden as it was like a moment of time. Like it got here. Look how beautiful that garden is. And then through, and then, budget constraints come in. Then new management comes in that doesn't quite get it. Then there's constant reorganizations, people coming and going. So that garden has been, what do you call it? Not laid to waste, but it's no longer getting what it needs to thrive. So as I'm stepping out, I see this as a positive end to a positive pilot, but all pilots do come to an end, and just to accept that that pilot has not gotten to the level of being able to scale within the context here that I'm leaving behind.
Okay. So how do you feel you're living that garden?
So it is, let's put it this way, it is still green and thriving, but I think without a dedicated gardener, the context is not going to be easy.
Yeah.
So I do hope that some of what we did stays and becomes more permanent. But honestly, a lot of the people that experienced and helped build what we created in SAP Barcelona have left the company, have moved to different roles within the company. So we don't even have the gardeners anymore.
Yeah.
In that space.
So that's the curiosity I'm having. So you see a garden that looks very nice, that you've nourished, loved. It's where it is because of part of a collective work.
Yeah.
Now a lot of gardeners have left and have decided to leave too.
Yeah.
And among them is you.
Yes. Yeah.
So there is at the same time the frustration of it feels like there is no gardener and the garden is at risk.
Yeah.
And you took the decision to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe help me understand what motivated the other part, right?
So an interesting thing happened. We were very successful in Barcelona, and Barcelona is part of a small segment of sales within SAP. And the location of Barcelona itself, not just the part that I was doing, but it itself was approaching customers in very novel, cool ways. And that was very successful. So SAP made the decision to let's replicate that in all the regions. So all of a sudden there was a global head for that. And he, based on the blueprint of Barcelona, and he came and he said, well, part of what made this successful was the Humanizing Business initiative. So let's put that in the different regions and try to scale that. Now, what ended up happening was myself and my team that were focused on the garden in Barcelona were brought to a global level and asked now to help other regions too, without actually, there never materialized any actual resources in the other locations, right? So the business was running, but not the humanizing business part. And for many, many different reasons, again, constant reshuffling within a global organization, the decision was made end of last year, to disband the entire global organization. And so two things happened along that journey. The first one was we were taken out of the local context, and then that global organization was distributed or taken apart. So there was no longer the home that we started with, and no longer the a positive example of, oh yeah, but in Singapore, the next step worked, or in the US, in the different regions that we were working on, we couldn't easily say, from the Barcelona pilot, we were able to scale that to other locations. And so in that transformation along the way, I lost the connectivity a little bit to the Barcelona location, as well as I think at that point it was when the global team got disbanded and they were offering packages for early retirement. I thought that's a nice thing, a nice point of time for me to take, rather than to start and try to start it again afresh.
Yeah.
So that's what also prompted my decision then to take the theme, the topic, the experience, and create a network between companies around it.
Okay, so yeah, so there's a double feeling, right?
Yeah.
There's like the sense of maybe like an opportunity, but not knowing what it can look like yet, and living something great, but maybe unaccomplished or unfinished.
Yeah, and
how would you phrase it in your own words?
I'm proud of what we created together, not me, but the team and everybody who participated in Barcelona. And I think I was one of the many people that then was churned in the organizational changes, and it feels like it was unfinished. We tried to scale too early, and not with enough consequence.
Yeah.
And I had this example also in the App House, where we started small and we kept going. And each time we found a comfortable plateau, we managed the next one and we became a global organization. And then the board even helped us create a partner network of app houses. So I've experienced the other side of these phases of piloting and growing and expanding in a very stable and performant way. And this one felt unfulfilled. Like it wasn't there yet, and we were squeezed out or squeezed into a global strategy way too early.
Well, this is what I'm seeing for you, Toby, for whatever it's worth. Yeah. But I'm seeing an opportunity to have so much more impact outside, because like how many organizations can you reach now? Freely, fully.
Yeah. Right? It resonates very well. I'll add to that it feels to me like sharing a legacy. Sounds a little pompous to say it that way, but to say I'm not moving. I'm not going to become a consultant. So I'm not looking to step into another company and start something for them. I want to help the sharing. And that includes the sharing of what I experienced over the last 20 years at SAP, and especially through the humanizing business experiences. So it does feel like grateful that I had that, and grateful that I can now help other people through connecting, sharing these experiences, the methodologies, the approaches, the impacts. Now I feel kind of freed to be able to share more.
And that's what I'm curious about. How might that very last frustrating feeling help you in doing that new mission even more efficiently or purposefully?
Coming back to kind of natural visualizations, I firmly believe much more in kind of how water flows through the path of least resistance. And I'm noticing in these conversations, I'm getting a lot more acceptance and interest and flow than it felt like within SAP. The global organization on all levels was going through so much change that my trying to push this theme forward was meeting more resistance than I had energy for. So this feels like
So it sounds like you're on a mission, and this environment is no longer the right one for you to flow in that mission.
Yeah. However, complex organizations, there's so many cool people at SAP, and I know many of them, and I think I'm inviting them into the conversation. So SAP is not excluded from these conversations. I'm just not limited by being primarily focused within SAP.
Yeah. Mm.
But I think hopefully in a year we'll sit down together and I'll have amazing stories to tell also about the network and how that's how I see what was done under wonderful circumstances is bearing fruit in a much broader context. I hope.
What do you want to do with this feeling that you live with? Like what do you want to do with it?
I want to leave it behind because I don't think it's beneficial. And I don't think it's fit to the new purpose. But that'll take some time, I think, to say, what could have been, or why did that work that way? And it's no one person's fault. It was a very complex situation, and there's no. So I love it when through a challenge I've learned something, and I feel like that challenge I didn't quite learn enough from it. It's like
I see.
I was there, but I couldn't have a takeaway that I could then process, not just for myself, but tell other people, yeah, I would have done this differently. I would have done, right? It was...
Feels like the arc is still open.
Yeah.
So what's usually useful for you to get an arc to close?
I talk about it on podcasts. No.
Hopefully.
No,
Hopefully
so I
it's
think
part of it.
that's part of it. It's the discussion of it, the honoring of what was done with so many amazing people. But also I think through that comes a little bit of distance, and it was a time and place that doesn't make it any less successful. And I think I'm in that phase right now where I need to digest it, talk about it, and put it to bed.
Just as for fun, if we'd say that, because you were looking a bit like there when you were talking about it, if you're now like, let's say you said 6 months, 1 year from today, in your new life, still on your mission in a different way, and you look at the Toby that was there 6 months ago, a year ago, right, living that podcast, like, what do you see when you look at him from that perspective? He's right there.
Yeah.
What do you see?
Most likely somebody sitting in the beginning of something new and a lot of uncertainty, who is excited, but perhaps still 1 foot in the old world.
Yeah.
Like, as you mentioned before, I'm just leaving SAP.
Yeah.
So I want to give myself and hopefully give that past person a fair phase to process and honor what happened before starting. Because there's a very easy, I think, very human way of saying, okay, jump into the next thing. It's exciting. Do the next thing. I want to allow that past person some time to process and and not fill it with time and energy.
So what do you want to tell him? What does he need to hear from you?
Relax.
Relax.
Just it's fine as it is. There's nothing to be solved, and so give yourself time.
Give yourself time. Yeah. Great. All right. So we thank you so much for opening up here.
I appreciate it.
How is this conversation?
I love talking with you, honestly. So we've had a few conversations before coming together, and you just have a very natural flow. And so I feel like you ask things in a very concrete but gentle way. So
Thank you.
Appreciate the conversation.
And where are you right now with that challenge? Like what's... You might be in the same place, and there's no expectations here, right? It's just I just want to help you debrief.
No, I'm feeling good, and I've gotten the signals, and I think part of what we're talking about is me also internalizing signals from friends and family, and to just take it easy. Don't just jump into the next thing to be productive, and the next thing doesn't have to be ready tomorrow. But there's a phase of uncertainty. I think we're like, especially myself, after so many years of knowing the rhythm of a specific business, every morning had its rhythm of the first meeting, the first emails, and now to step into something that's, it's more self-defined. There's a joy in that, but I have to, I think, ease into it a little
It's very
bit.
interesting because it sounds like the acceptance is bigger than just this frustration, right? It's more like the new lifestyle acceptance. Yeah.
It's a combination of both, laying something to rest, even a frustration on that level of complexity, and the saying, don't avoid it, give it time.
Give yourself permission to be with it and to process it.
Yeah. So both my parents, by the way, are holistic family therapists. So
Wow.
So I'm very used to conversations around this, and I've been getting wonderful feedback from my parents as well around these spaces.
Nice. How they might have influenced you as a leader and in your view of leadership?
Oh, massively. I mean, so much, of course, comes from our family histories, and so my parents, they before being professional therapists, they were both ministers.
Really?
So it was a very
Wow.
interesting mix. They're both German, but I was born and raised in the U.S., so they're multicultural, and they very much instilled a conversation level with my sister and I. Every dinner table was open conversations and looking at a challenge very holistically. So I think not to say as a systems thinker, but as a holistic, and also both ministry and family therapy are very human-centric perspectives. And I think that's absolutely something that I brought with me. And there's a funny story, actually, that I know exactly where I was. I was sitting in a car, driving home from work. I know exactly at what traffic light I was sitting at when the realization came to me. I was always very productive and kind of a project manager, and I was very. And that day, I had really helped as a new early young leader. I had helped somebody, a person, move through a difficult situation, and I remember sitting there being like, "This is it." That one experience meant more to me than the hundreds of projects that I had done. And so I think...
What happened in that moment internally for you?
It was more here than here. I was always very proud of being successful in projects and getting things done and having solutions. And even innovation is creative, but it's also, there's an output to it. And then as soon as you help a person, it's emotional and fulfilling on a different level. And I also attribute that a bit to my parents for having the connection between the brain and the heart.
And so if you had, talking about your heart, one or a few key messages at heart that you wish would land in some investors, executives listening to us, what would they be?
So one of them is, and I say this very often, and I say it with a laugh, you're human too. So all executives, our board members, Nobel laureates, they're all human beings, and we all have similar challenges and uncertainties, and we're not the roles we play, and so you're not alone in that. I think accepting that means there's a connection. And I think there's a huge power of making sure you feel connected with other people, especially in the similar context to you. You understand you have similar challenges. You reconnect as human beings, not in roles, because a lot of top leaders don't feel they can be their full selves in their operational context because there's certain expectations on them. But you bring them together with similar people with similar experiences, similar levels, and it's amazing how freeing that is. So you're human, you're not alone. And the last thing, again, I think I've said this a few times, it's the experience of of being able to develop a more human business, because this is also a common thing I've seen with so many leaders, is that once you've reached a certain level of once you've reached a certain level of your profession, it's no longer about finding that next step, right? You've reached something meaningful for yourself, wherever that is, and all of a sudden it becomes more value driven. It's like, okay, how do I do this in a different way? And that's where I'm hoping that we can get more people on top level to have conversations about what does the future of work look like and how to make that more human. Because I think that's a common theme that a lot of people are looking for when we talk about value, purpose, human centricity. We've got amazing people there in the right positions to make a positive change, but I think a lot of people feel alone. And I think that's what I'm hoping is we can create connections for people to actually have meaningful change together.
Yeah. And it's this idea that what brought you here won't lead you there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And a few other messages you had, like one was when we talked yesterday, you said something around, I was wondering if it was in my notes or just in my mental notes. There is a lot of good people that have so much talent and leadership power stuck in large organizations.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
What do you want to say to people that could identify right now with what I'm saying that you told me yesterday?
Yeah, I think there are, in all large organizations, amazing people that have so much talent and so much to give, but have probably adapted to the context, the processes, the norms around them. And to step into a more leadership role and to be able to express themselves more fully, I think what I really hope for people is that they can connect to one another, because I still believe that they're never alone. Change starts with yourself, so be brave to start that process yourself. But also, it's not you against the machine. It's you and many other people have the ability to create positive change around you.
And I'm thinking as well, in terms of ROI, how much you can get more of someone that, anyways, you're paying the same salary for the same person, but you get so much more of that talent when you make that happen.
Yeah, and I think there's the popular Gallup polls that show how many people are disengaged at work, and thereby with the assumption of the loss of productivity, the loss of innovation, the loss of empathy.
And you look at the Q12 questions from Gallup that determine most employee engagement.
Yeah.
Like there is nearly half of them that directly or indirectly are about, I feel appreciated at work.
Yeah.
I feel like my manager cares about me. I have a best friend at work.
Yeah.
So it's about feeling appreciated, seen, heard.
Yeah.
Your opinion counts.
Yes. Yeah.
Your opinion counts is one of the questions I believe from memory.
Crazy?
And that's like exactly what you're talking about.
And of course these are very direct questions that they're using in a global survey. What does that mean for the individual? If you're not feeling that in your wherever you are, what can you do differently? How often have I talked to people who are frustrated and feel trapped in their role, in their team with that manager? And then when you start asking them, so what are some things you could do? Change really does start with yourself, is to be able to, hey, maybe share your idea with your team. And then if a team can have a joint decision, the manager that might sometimes see as a blocker, if it's just a one-on-one, is more receptive to it. If you have a team that's self-organizing and say, hey, no, this is something we want to try.
It's so much more agreeable as well for the leader. Like everyone is empowered, everyone is.
And I think people should try to create positive change wherever they are, starting with themselves and starting with the people around them before disengaging.
Yeah.
I think it's a sad state if people, we have this quiet resignation, right?
And it's crazy too how, and again, I'm coming back to your humanizing business, how we assume that it's not like the work environment, even in my work, like we always frame it to sell the programs in a very business manner. Yeah. But really, you're talking about relationships.
Yes. Absolutely. And
So,
we
like,
create the reality around us.
you coach a team. It doesn't matter if it's an executive team.
Yeah.
If it's an individual contributor team, it's a team
Yeah.
made of human beings.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's a work relationship
Yeah.
or a personal relationship or a friendship or a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
It's a relationship.
Yeah.
And I think we tend to forget about that. Like, if you would reframe, I'm with someone, my partner,
Yeah.
and I don't feel like my opinion ever counts.
Yes. True.
Like, you would
Use those
advise,
same Gallup questions for your personal relationship. Yeah.
what would you advise your best friend or your son or your brother or
Yeah.
your sister or your
Yeah.
daughter to do if,
Yeah.
if they were stuck in a relationship where they say my opinion doesn't count,
Yeah.
I don't feel seen, I don't feel heard.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like almost becoming abstract
Yes.
when we talk about work, to the point where it's actually a very basic thing
It is. Yeah.
to make people feel respected and
I think
and
you
counted.
feel it. You walk into a company, into a team, and if there's a vibe, if it's thriving, you feel it. And what you're feeling is the relationships. If it's expressed in joking or helpfulness or sometimes even critical thinking, but still there's something that we react to.
Yeah.
And we all play a part in our context of creating that type of environment.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we've normalized sometimes kind of like a not very healthy environment as okay, but that's work, so it's supposed to be like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think it coming back from the belief that there is a contradiction between people and performance,
Right.
or actually I think there was a recent last year McKinsey full study, super interesting, showing how companies that outperform all others are
Consistently.
not the ones that are full people,
Yeah.
not the one that are full performance, the one that know how to do people and performance at the same time.
Yeah. So
And
they
outperform,
humanize
like,
the business.
they humanize the business. But really, it's really about that.
Yeah, and there's an amazing study that showed that for the world's top CEOs, culture is on the top 3 of their priority list, but only 15% of them say that they know what to do. So they recognize that culture is the only permanent competitive advantage they will have in the future. Because even the time span for technological advances, for that giving you an advantage on the market, that time frame is getting very, very short. So the only thing that keeps companies vibrant is the culture that they're building. But many of them don't know what to do about it. And so I think that's...
Maybe one last thing in the takeaways that we talked about yesterday when we were preparing this. Another contradiction that might be a first intuition of some people listening to us would be like, okay, it's cool to empower others, but then it means my opinion and my value doesn't count, right? And I'm just like someone empowering others.
Yeah.
But actually, like, there is something in coaching, and you said it was one of your mantra with your I think one of your leader and sponsor in the company and maybe friend now.
Yes.
About allowing yourself to hold an opinion, but without being attached to it.
Yes. So I think the quote is, have a strong opinion that is weakly held. And so I love that, because a leader normally is also someone with some experience that should have experience, should be able to bring that experience to a conversation, but not be the dominant voice. You know, if they say, I have a strong opinion, everybody goes, oh, okay, you know, the boss has said, so we're all going to agree with him or her. But that is also say, and I'm ready to change that opinion, but I'm not sure if it's the right one for where we are right now. What do you think? You know, so have an opinion, being able to state it, but being on eye level with the rest of your team. And I had this challenge when I was running the App House. I was so proud of the people and the context that I didn't have much presence. So this friend and mentor and my manager at the time really said, hey, Toby, don't forget you're part of this too. Be proud and be part of it.
Yeah.
Don't just be behind it. And so I actually had an open conversation with the entire team saying, hey, how can I do this in a respectful way? Because I don't want to go out there and talk about how great the App House is, but it's actually your amazing work that's going on.
Yeah.
They're like, no, we want that for you.
But that's great because it's coming back to the topic of the different leadership. So it's like allowing yourself to lead as a supporter and as well showing the vision. And both can happen.
And for me, it was having that conversation with the team, saying, guys, I don't want to steal the light from the amazing work you're doing. This is how I'm presenting it. Does this feel fair? And everybody's like, yeah. And you do that really well, Toby. Thank you for doing that for us. So it felt accepted.
It is great because it opens as well the topic of like supporting is leadership.
Yeah.
Collaborating eye to eye is leadership. Showing the vision is leadership.
Yeah.
And so much more positions that usually are maybe not traditionally associated with leadership is leadership.
And how often do we go in and there's people in the back, can even be an assistant or a front desk personnel who's the one who's bringing everybody together, creating little events. They are the gardeners. That's also a leadership position.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think large organizations tend to promote managers that are just kind of focused on the outcomes, but there's many forms of leadership that need to have need to be able to emerge in a team and in a company to be successful.
Toby, the last words of this podcast is you finishing a prompt, very simple, the same for everyone, for every guest, is leadership is
personal.
Leadership is personal. Full stop.
Full stop.
Okay.
And how that gets defined by the person in the context they're in, there are many ways that can be. And so I don't see it as a byproduct of an organization or a title or a level. It's very, very personal. And we all lead in different parts of our lives in different ways.
Thank you so much, Toby, for making us the honor to be here with us today. And see you very soon.
Thank you.